The movie begins as we are introduced to the protagonist named Chev. Chev is a skilled assassin who specializes in killing elite and powerful people. He works for Carlito, an authoritative ringleader of an enormous Mexican cartel. At Carlito's request, Chev had assassinated Kim, a Chinese competitor of his employee, which earned him many angry foes. One morning, Chev gets out of bed and immediately starts to experience some severe symptoms. His vision is blurred and he can barely walk as he staggers to his living room. There, he finds a video disc and plays it on his TV. On the tape, Ricky, a fellow hitman, delivers a message to Chev. Ricky reveals that he injected the assassin with a toxin in his sleep and discloses that the poison will kill him within an hour. Chev is outraged at hearing the news and destroys the TV in frustration. He immediately races to his car and speeds to a nearby club to look for Ricky. On his way there, he calls Kylo, his street informant, and asks him to find the missing hitman to help him enact his revenge. While on the steering wheel, Chev's heartbeat gradually slows down as he struggles to keep his eyes open. Luckily, he manages to reach the club and barges past the door. Chev immediately seizes the club's owner and holds him at gunpoint. The assassin asks about Ricky's current location, but the owner calmly explains that he doesn't know. Chev is disappointed by his answer and returns to his car and speeds off. A few minutes later, he calls his doctor named Miles. Chev explains his situation to him and details the symptoms he's experiencing. After some thought, Miles reveals that Chev was injected with a poison known as the Chinese cocktail. The toxin is extremely fatal and shuts down adrenaline production in the body. Miles advises Chev to keep moving to increase his body's adrenaline production, as failure to do so would result in immediate death. The doctor also tells him that he traveled out of town, but would return in a few hours. Chev thanks him for his advice and cuts the call. Right then, Chev hears a loudspeaker asking him to pull over and spots multiple police vehicles behind him. Seeing this, he uses this as an opportunity to pump up his adrenaline. Instead of pulling over, he ignores all their commands and drives his car into a mall. As the officers chase after him in hot pursuit, he eventually crashes the car into an escalator and escapes the cops through a back door. Chev bursts out into the street and races to a nearby taxi. He forcefully pulls out the passenger and enters as he shouts at the driver to speed off. Inside the cab, Chev follows the doctor's instructions and keeps moving as he aggressively bops his head from side to side. After a short drive, the cab pulls over at a nearby supermarket and Chev quickly enters it. He pulls the cashier across the counter and threatens him with a gun. Chev goes around the store and collects a bunch of energy drinks, after which he returns to the cab and heads to Carlito's house. There, he joins Carlito in his pool and converses with the cartel lord. Chev discovers that Carlito is aware of his predicament and, in fact, even ordered it. It turns out that the cartel was being attacked by the vengeful Chinese gang following Kim's assassination. Hence, Carlito decided to have Chev killed to make peace with the rival gang. Chev is furious to hear this and leaves the house as he returns to his waiting cab. He throws the cab driver to the floor and steals the car, racing off with it. A few minutes later, he receives a call from Miles, who offers him more tips to combat the poison. The doctor tells him to get some shots of epinephrine, a synthetic version of adrenaline, from a hospital. Chev thanks the doctor for his help and cuts the line as a call from Kylo comes in. The informant tells him that he spotted Ricky's brother Alex in a nearby eatery and asks Chev to come to the location. Chev is delighted by the news and instantly heads to the restaurant. He patiently waits outside the premises for Alex and immediately attacks him as the man steps outside. Chev amputates Alex's hand with a butcher knife and knocks him to the ground. The assassin grabs Alex by the collar and asks him about Ricky. Despite his injuries, Alex refuses to snitch on his brother and instead tackles Chev to the ground. Kylo comes to Chev's rescue and hits Alex on the head with a wooden stick. Alex is distracted by the informant, and Chev seizes the opportunity to shoot him from behind. A few minutes later, Chev enters a hospital and disguises himself as a patient. He walks calmly down a hallway, but spots a pair of officers in a ward and immediately sprints off. The officers closely tail him. However, Chev manages to stay ahead of them as he dodges some obstructing patients and races down a flight of stairs. He sights a group of medics carrying a patient on a stroller and rushes after them. He seizes a nurse and holds him at gunpoint as he asks for an epinephrine shot. The nurse is frightened and frantically searches the stroller cart for the drug. Luckily, he finds the vial and hands it to the hitman, who snatches it. Chev feels his heart rate gradually slowing down and devises a crazy plan to get it pumping. Chev asks the nurse to shock him with a defibrillator, but the medic is hesitant to do it. However, when Chev points a gun at him, he succumbs to his demands and blasts him with the device. The shock is immense and throws Chev backward as he falls into an elevator. The officers approach the elevator door to arrest Chev, but the hitman shoots at them as they retreat and hide behind a wall. Chev throws a patient out of the elevator and shuts the doors as he heads downstairs to finalize his escape. While the elevator goes down, he uses a syringe to draw from the vial and injects himself. Sadly, he takes an overdose of the drug and immediately goes into overdrive as he runs around the city hyperactively. He eventually stops when he sees a crowd watching TV on the street and discovers that the police have launched a citywide search for him. We're talking about Jason Statham on bath salts here. Those police don't have a chance. Meanwhile, Ricky gets word of his brother's death as the men deliver Alex's severed hand to him. Ricky is livid to discover that Chev is responsible and decides to find and permanently kill him, even though that was already his plan. In the other end of the city, Chev is concerned about his girlfriend, Eve, and calls to check on her. He is relieved to hear her voice and tells her he'll be at her house shortly. An unsuspecting Eve doesn't think much of it and kisses him goodbye as she cuts the call. A minute later, Chev spots a policeman on a bike and grabs his gun as he threatens the officer to back away. Chev steals the bike and taunts the cop by driving around in circles before ultimately speeding to Eve's house. There, he urges her to get dressed, and the couple heads out of the apartment. Outside, he spots one of Ricky's men and trips Eve's bag to distract her. While she picks it up, Chev attacks the thug and snaps his neck before dumping him in a nearby pool. Chev returns to Eve, and the couple goes downtown to a local restaurant. So far, a perfectly normal date with Statham. While they wait for their meal, Chev reveals to Eve that he is a professional assassin. He explains his current situation to her and informs her that she is in grave danger. Eve is startled to hear this and believes Chev made the story up to indirectly break up with her. Livid, she storms out of the restaurant while Chev closely follows her. He grabs her hand, but immediately feels his heartbeat slowing down as he drops to the floor. To kickstart his heart, Chev asks Eve to pump his adrenaline by doing an activity in the middle of the street. Eve initially refuses and calls him crazy, but gets turned on when he kisses her. Eventually, the couple passionately do that activity, kickstarting his heart better than Motley Crue ever could, while the staring crowd cheers them on. Right then, Chev receives a call from Kylo, who informs him that Ricky is at a nearby warehouse. Hearing this, Chev pulls his pants back on and kisses Eve goodbye before heading off to the revealed location. Eve also puts on her clothes as the spectators disperse and continue with their respective lives. When Chev reaches the warehouse, he finds Carlito's men waiting for him and discovers that Kylo is dead. Chev realizes that his boss, Carlito, ordered his assassination as the thugs tortured Kylo to lure him to the warehouse. An agitated Chev shoots and kills two of the men as a gunfight ensues. A few moments later, Chev spots Eve in the building's elevator and is astonished to see her. He immediately races to the elevator while using Kylo's corpse as a shield from the thug's shots. However, just as Chev jumps into the elevator, a bullet hits him in the leg. The couple takes the lift to the ground floor, where a group of tailors are sewing clothes. Chev ambushes one of the thugs and shoves his hand into a sewing machine. The man screams in agony, while Chev and Eve leave the building as they drive away in a stolen car. Carlito's men also enter their cars and pursue the couple in a fiery chase. Chev speeds away in a quest to lose his foes, but the thugs are resilient and shoot at Chev to stop him. Luckily, the shots only hit the car's back window, and Chev quickly returns fire. His shots hit the men and ultimately causes their cars to crash. After they complete their getaway, Chev receives a call from Miles, who tells him he's back in town. Chev is relieved to hear this and immediately heads to the doctor's residence. There, Miles gives gives him an epinephrine infusion to further stall the poison's progression. However, the physician clearly explains to him that there is no antidote for the toxin, and he's sure to die in a couple hours. Miles offers to give him a painless poison to help him die more easily, but Chev refuses, citing that he still has a score to settle with Ricky. A few minutes later, Chev calls Ricky and asks him to meet in a nearby hotel. Ricky accepts the offer and agrees to meet him, after which Chev cuts the call. The hitman kisses Eve goodbye and promises to return as he heads for the meeting venue. Chev loads his gun in the hotel's bathroom and hides it under his coat before entering an elevator. He goes to the top floor and is welcomed by 2 of Ricky's men. The duo aggressively collects his gun and ushers him to Ricky. Chev finds Carlito and Ricky sitting side by side on a couch. After exchanging pleasantries, Carlito pulls out a syringe containing the Chinese cocktail from his briefcase. Carlito asks his men to hold Chev down as he prepares to inject the hitman with another dose of the poison, thus killing him for good. However, before the thugs can make a move, one of them is shot in the head. Carlito's gang is shocked to see this, but soon realizes that a rival gang standing behind Chev took the shot. When Carlito looks at the gang, he is astonished to discover that they are led by Kim. In a flashback scene, we see that Chev spared Kim's life and asked the gang leader to get out of town for a few days. Kim obliged, and word spread to the streets that he was dead. However, he has been alive and in hiding the entire time. Pretty good twist for a movie this stupid. Hence, to show his appreciation, Kim brought along his gang to save Chev from his cunning employer. The Chinese mafia opens fire on Carlito and his men as the gang scatters to dodge the oncoming shots. Ricky holds his gun to shoot the rival gang, but Chev throws a wine bottle at him, which chops off his fingers. Meanwhile, Carlito hides behind a wall and calls his pilot to land a helicopter on the roof. A few seconds later, Chev spots Carlito as he leaves the area and goes up a flight of stairs. Chev closely follows the gang leader and stops him just as he enters the helicopter. Right then, Ricky sneaks behind Chev and injects him with the second dose of the poison. Carlito screams at Ricky for ghosting him during the shootout, prompting the angered hitman to shoot the ringleader in the chest. Ricky throws Carlito's body out of the chopper and tells the pilot to start the aircraft. As the chopper takes flight, Chev grabs the door and attacks Ricky. The two men have a fist fight high up in the sky and eventually fall from the aircraft. While in the air, Chev grabs Ricky's neck and sharply snaps it, thus finally completing his revenge mission. Shortly after, Chev lands on a car and bounces off of it as he drops to the floor. The movie ends as Chev stares wide-eyed at the camera, hence signifying that he is still alive, still Jason Statham, and still a goddamn bald-ass badass.